Today and everything like we're going to talk to Elizabeth O'Brien again. Led has been in Elizabeth's life for the last 34 years, and she is calling me on my phone, which is not the computer. So, what do you want to start off talking about?
Yeah, so you were going to tell me about the VAT, if that's all right.
Yes, the
Yeah.
my potential entry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd love this episode today to be about that because there's only 11 days left. I mean, 10 days left now in the competition.
Yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
love it. So,
yes. So,
so
yeah,
Volcano Art Prize is inspired by the fact that volcanoes were the original source of lead for the
yeah,
surface of the earth before
yes.
industrial humans and pre-industrial humans mined it, refined it, and then blasted it out into the atmosphere and
Yeah.
into people's houses, etc. So, tell me a little bit about the history of the Volcano Art Prize and what it means.
Yeah, sure. So I have been publishing a lead action e-newsletter for 32, 3 years, and I always found that I preferred to publish it with lots and lots of pictures, and it became really difficult. Like I would write to newspapers and say, "Can I reproduce your image from this article?" And they would say, "Well, yes, sure, that'll cost you $1,000." So we just didn't have pictures, and I realized that there is the old saying, "A picture tells 1,000 words." And when I went to Los Angeles childhood lead poisoning prevention program for a tour in 1994, they had this wonderful art competition where the children were asked in classes in kindergarten and early primary school. They were given a lesson on the sources of lead and how they could protect their little baby brothers and sisters and so on. And they were asked to draw pictures, and the pictures were put into this beautiful calendar. And the ones that were the award-winning ones, and the kids got a little prize, I think, for their entries. And so, yeah, it just inspired me, and I put those two things together: our need for graphics that didn't cost money. Well, it does cost a fair bit of money to actually run Volcano Art Prize, but anyway, when it's successful, I'm hoping that it will actually pay for itself by the entry fees, because we only charge a $10 entry fee for adults in OECD countries. So all of the adults in the rest of the world outside of the 26 or so OECD countries, the wealthiest countries, are able to enter for free, and all children globally are able to enter for free. So we try to get as much income as the prize pool, and if we got more entries, we would be able to increase the prize pool. So currently it stands at $400 for the judge awarded first prize to the best entry, and that can be a child or adult. We don't discriminate, we don't have categories. And then $200 for the people's choice. So once it's online, people can like the image just by pressing the little thumbs up on the page that their image is on, and whichever entry gets the most votes gets $200 cash prize, Australian. And then there's our sponsor. We've had a single sponsor for the entire. This is the 14th year of running it, I think, and our sponsor is Picture Products, and they make an image. I've got my coffee here right now, which can show you. This is an image that my son entered in Volcano Art Prize. It's myself with my grandson sitting on a rock at his farm, and the message is all about we need to look after our children. So my son's lead safety message is also printed on the other side of the mug, and so 30 of the winning entries get a mug like that each year, and we post them around the world. Yeah, so that's the story of Volcano Art Prize.
And it's hosted on Lead. Is it Lead Safe World?
No, it's got its own website, so volcanoartprize.com, and you can look to that website for inspiration for what you might enter, and it's a huge range of things. So basically, the aim is to present a picture which tells a larger story, and you have maybe a sentence or two to describe what your lead safety message is. So when children create an image, anything that they paint or draw, whatever, doesn't matter, or create as a sculpture, their parents can just take a photo of it and then make up any message that they like. Really, as long as the message, because adults do make up the messages, children typically don't. I mean, some older children do, but mostly it's their teachers or parents. And so the message is what inspires me to then search the website. So every time I'm looking for an image to illustrate a fact sheet that I've written or a newsletter article that someone else has written or I've written, I go to the website and I search for words, and it's those messages which have the words which then bring up the images which then I can put into a fact sheet. So some entries have been reprinted not only on Volcano Art Prize, where they remain forever. There's an archive of all 14 years worth of images, but also they can be remaining on our other two websites, leadsafeworld.com or lead.org.au, also forever, because we tend to just keep our archive of publications with illustrations. So last year, for instance, I wrote a national model lead safety policy, and I illustrated that with every single entry from 2023 Volcano Art Prize. So there's a newsletter, Lead Action News issue, which is just the whole of every entry from that year, and also the national lead safety model policy for every country to try and organise an actual policy that attends to primary, secondary and tertiary lead poisoning prevention, to make the world lead safe. So that's
why we're here. I love that. That's an awesome idea.
That's right. It all joins together. I love children's paintings, but adults can make some very, very creative entries as well. And I love it when people think about a particular topic of lead safety, and then they take photos specific for that. Like, for instance, at the moment, I'm very keen to get some information down about this news that children living in a home where there are firearms are going to be likely to be more lead exposed than children living without firearms in the home. And I've been told that there's even ammunition dispensing little machines in America.
On every corner. I've never seen one, but I'm in New York, so there's not a lot of guns here. In other states, they're like very lax gun laws, and a bullet vending machine does sound very like some parts of the country, probably.
Yeah, and also I've heard that in supermarkets you can have an entire aisle of the supermarket dedicated to ammunition. I've heard this.
That sounds really wild too. I've also never seen that, but it's possible.
If this really does happen anywhere in, I don't know, the West, the Wild West of America, I would love photos of that, and even photos of people shooting guns. We don't get enough of that because, every time you shoot a bullet out of a gun, there's a little puff of smoke that's got lead in it, and you breathe it in, and so it doesn't. Yeah, so I've always said, the bullets lead poison from both ends of the gun. And then, of course, there's all those people walking around in America who've been shot, who didn't die, and the lead in their bodies is leaching into their bloodstream, especially if it gets into their joints. So, any sort of images which can illustrate all of those aspects of lead exposure and how prevalent it is in the United States. Those are fantastic photos. I mean, even a photo of a gun. In my lifetime, I've never seen a gun. I've never, I've seen one holstered, but on a police officer. I've never handled a gun. I've never, we just don't know what these things, what normal life is like in America, where
full of guns.
Where they're more common than pets, I'm told.
Well, because
more common than people.
They are more common than people, because I think some people own, you can own 10. It's not hard to own 10 guns.
There's a limit.
No. I'm saying you could very easily wind up with 10 guns if you start buying them.
Yeah, but don't some people own hundreds?
I guess I don't want to say anything crazy, but I think I got a lot of pictures of guns, though. I couldn't find any on my phone just now, but I got a lot of pictures of glowing guns and ones that people cleaned and they weren't able to get in all the crevices, or right around.
Use the detect lead on the gun. Oh, see, that's a perfect picture to send.
Yeah, I'll send you.
As an entry in Volcano Art Prize. So all your customers, whatever they've used their detect lead fluorescent kit on, they should send in pictures of that. And we don't discriminate. If you want to advertise a particular product through Volcano Art Prize, that's absolutely fine. And if you've got a fantastic contractor, someone who, I don't know if you even have these in America, people who professionally vacuum ceiling void dust out. That contractor could put an image onto Volcano Art Prize and maybe get more work for their effort. And we only have lead trained paint contractors. We don't have licensed lead contractors for paint work. So we have people who put up the images of their careful efforts to remove paint safely, lead paint safely. There's any number of images, videos, and children's artwork and adults artwork. There are some artistic adults out there. I've got lots of paintings by wonderful artists who've entered and put great messages with their work. So it's always nice to have a choice of fantastic images to publish and put in other publications. So that's the aim of it.
Nice. I mean, I see a lot of really awesome entries on here, and not entries, but because I have a section on my website where people could upload their lead finds, and I got probably a few hundred people, and they found it in everywhere from their workplace to on their, one lady worked at a battery manufacturing plant. She found it on the door handles in the break room. She had an elevated lead level.
Yes.
Inside her mask, even. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
But so there's a bunch of different ones, and I'll definitely share this video with everybody. I'm looking for one with a gun though, but I don't have it on the website. But I do have several pictures of both handguns and longer guns that have distinct markings around where the shell ejects, where the barrel is, and you can see where they cleaned it, and there's crevices that are hard to reach, and all that stuff is really really interesting. So I was debating for my own Volcano Art Prize entry whether to do an actual lead object or image that's been converted and is glowing, or to make like on the detect lead card, how it's non-toxic but it does look like lead, it glows like it does. Whether to make a card, like maybe a 4x6 card that has a picture of maybe like the world, and then you can see the frequency by which children are poisoned with lead by the number of dots. It would be like a pointillism drawing, and there would be X number of points on each spot, and that would denote the number of children there. And then when you shine the light on it, you could see how many actually have lead poison as a percentage of the total population.
Right.
So that would be kind of a cool way to show it
It's a
graphically.
bit tricky because what typically happens is the whole country is lead contaminated, and different children live in different areas and get different measures. Like so, there's really no such thing as a non-lead poisoned child. There's lead exposure gradient, which means that the average child is over whatever level or not over whatever level. Yeah, I noticed a map which the Pure Earth put out recently, and they do very good work, but I really have to question their data because they put the average blood lead level in both Australia and the United States as between 1 and 2 micrograms per deciliter, and everything I've read in Haynes studies, on the Centers for Disease Control website about blood lead, their regular biannual studies, says that American blood leads on average are always below 1, so they're in the 0 to 1 microgram per deciliter range. And in Australia, we just don't have enough studies to say what the average is, and I believe from everyone I ever speak to that it's not between 1 and 2. So yeah, I have to question, where does all the data come from? Yeah.
Well, they would be the first to say that they don't do anything in the United States. They focus on international work. So, but that's just a number that they sound like they made up more or less. But it sounds pretty reasonable, but they probably juxtapose that with the average blood lead of developing countries that they're more concerned about, which was probably higher.
Yeah, which is fair enough. But I think giving too much credit to Australia is a bad idea because Australia's done absolutely nothing compared to the United States on reducing lead exposures.
Well, we've just done next to nothing.
Oh no.
No, we've done stuff. Yeah, we've definitely done stuff. I'm not being critical.
Really good documentation about there's been, I think it's something like 46 pieces of legislation have been changed since 1970 in the United States to do with lead. I mean, it's phenomenal what has happened in the United States. There's still stuff around the edges that sure needs to be fixed, but I don't know, this whole focus on how much lead is in a little a range of foods or whatever. It really does. It's a first world problem.
Yes.
when you've got the time and money to test every grain of
rice,
cereal.
Yeah.
And you then I wish you'd take your money and your time and you'd go and test in Asia and Africa where absolutely everything is lead contaminated, not just the food, but the pots and pans, the fuel there. It's just and Ayurvedic medicine and some Chinese medicines, and Mexican, traditional medicines. Those are the things where literally billions of people are being exposed every day by things that have percent measures of lead in them. We're not talking, part per billion. We're talking percent levels.
Part per 100. Big difference.
Yes, big difference. That's right. So yeah. Anyway, yeah.
A lot of work to be done. Yeah, in a lot of different places. But everybody experiences the exposure differently. People in areas where everyone's poisoned, they probably don't know about it. They probably never know about it. In a place where your child gets tested, you'll find out, and then whatever you interpret that as is going to shape potentially the next years of your life, and that is also hazardous, and that is also the definition of a first world problem, because first world information is a lot different than no information in a third world nation where everything is completely different. Yeah.
And it really concerns me that in China they're still using human sewage for fertilizer, and that really does put the lead into the human food cycle in such a way that...
I mean, I hate lead, but that sounds like maybe the last thing I would think about in that case. Because it probably puts a lot of other stuff. But yeah, you're right. Any food, because you're basically trapping the lead in this horrible cycle of recycling the human waste onto the food and then...
Yeah. And then there's the intergenerational recycling, where the mothers are putting lead into their babies, because they've got so much in their body and the body tries to get rid of it, and some of it is put into the fetus and...
Right into the bones of the baby, it sounds like, for sure, too. Because, calcium absorption is very high.
Yeah, because they're developing at that point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and the whole question, it's interesting, I'm listening to a book on Audible books called Why We Die, and at the moment, and it's talking about the body, having this fantastic method of eating its own poor molecules or misbehaved molecules or degraded molecules, whatever, within the cell, and just turning them into good stuff. But it hasn't got up to the point which I'm dying to hear. What does it do when there's toxics in those molecules? You can't reuse toxics. I mean, so you can reuse toxics, but it's not going to help. It's going to make your health worse. So it's a good question. We think of the body as being this fantastic mechanism for making stuff out of water and air and oxygen and so on, and food, and we don't have a good understanding of how the toxic elements that we have put into our food and our air and our water are actually able to be dealt with by the body. So it's a great study, the biochemistry of toxics and or the biokinetics of how they move about from different organs and how they eventually move out of the body. But so we think of the circular economy. We're all about this idea that you can actually have just inputs. Like paper is always a common example. You can recycle paper over and over and over and just keep not having to put in too much. But even if you did put in some more fresh, you've still got renewable trees, timber, it's all renewable. But when there's toxics in the mix, that at some point you've got to work out how to remove that lead or other toxic from the system permanently, not just have it recycled through food, through bodies, through generations to the next generation and so on. How do you do it? How do you stop people making batteries, for instance, from new lead, or ammunition from new lead? You've got to only be making the things that you insist on making out of lead from recycled lead. You've got to be pulling it from the sediments and from soil contamination. And
that would be nice, yeah.
Building dust contamination and paint waste contamination. Yeah, do you know anything about, has there been any effort in the United States to recycle lead from lead paint waste?
Not that I know of.
Lead contaminated soil.
I don't know what they do with the soil. I think the people just say to bury it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess is a good idea.
Yeah, burying it and making a barrier between it.
Yeah, putting concrete over it, putting hardscaping over it, putting grass over it.
And permethine, those geotextiles.
Yes.
Yeah, because apparently they're really important to stop the earthworms. It's a bit of a nightmare for earthworms, but apparently if you put permethine or another geotextile over lead-contaminated soil, then the earthworms can't make their way up, because otherwise the risk is that you can find that, people have said, earthworms can bring up soil from 6 feet down in a soil profile.
Really?
To the surface through their lifestyle.
Crazy lifestyle.
yeah, so when you put this geotextile down and then you put fresh soil on the top, you have to hope that you've also got some new earthworms in the top layer, because all the ones underneath, the 6 feet under, are literally going to stay 6 feet under and die. Oh, now this reminds me, sorry, I'm jumping from topic to topic, but I had an amazing phone call once in the 90s from a guy who was into permaculture in the world's largest lead mining town, the most productive lead mining town, which is Broken Hill in far western New South Wales in Australia. And he had this idea that because he was using a lot of earthworms and they were taking all the toxic metals, including lead, out of the soil and putting it into their casings,
sits on the surface.
And his plan was to dry the dead earthworms, right, who had all this toxic contamination in them, and make a radiation shielding sheet wall out of the dead casings, so that you could then sell it to X-ray places.
Would they accumulate that much lead?
Well, there was so much lead in the soil. We're talking percent.
Oh wow! Yeah.
In Broken Hill, but yeah, I tried to contact him. I found him on Facebook, and I found the group that he belonged to on Facebook, and yeah, I'm useless at Facebook, so I wrote to them, but they never answered. So I don't know what the success was of that. But there you go. There's something for any radiologists in your audience who might be able to consider, should we be using worm casings for castings?
Yeah. If they have enough, if they're in Broken Hill, I guess, which is, like you said, one of the largest lead mines.
Yeah. But you've got a lot of lead mines in America. You're a pretty big producer of lead.
Wow. Yeah. No, I'm actually not an expert on that. I don't know too much about the specific mines. I know about some contaminated sites, some towns that wound up, a couple had to be abandoned entirely.
Like Boise? Boise's an ongoing town, isn't it?
Yeah.
Idaho, that's a big lead mining area. But yeah, have you sold any of your detect lead kits into lead mining towns, and do they just spray and find lead everywhere?
No, I haven't really had any experience with anybody who lives in those areas. Either they're not in my audience, or they didn't tell me if they did buy it. It's just not something that really popped up on my radar so far. But I do definitely have an interest in detecting lead in soil. And would you say that soil is the predominant risk factor for a mining town, or is it also the air?
Yeah, but also the ceiling void dust. I really cannot overemphasize.
Would you call that an attic?
Importance. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, attic dust is.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone knows what an attic is here, but I don't think anyone knows what a ceiling void dust is.
Right.
Okay. Your attic can contain dust that blows in or has blown in from the outside. All attics are vented, hopefully. Yeah. So then you would have an accumulation of lead debris, dust up there, and that could come into your house.
Yes, and especially if, say, you have a tornado or a hailstorm that damages the roof and therefore damages the ceiling, so that is then falling into the living space. And even if it's just the edges of the room, like the cornices, back there, where there's cracks and it's coming down, and you can see it on the floor. Like I always tell people to have a strong light or sunlight to look and see after they've mopped their floor, because I always recommend totally moppable, wet, cleanable floors for people with young children. So if you mop your floor and then observe over the next few days, is there any part of the edge of the room or anything like where the light comes through the ceiling to allow any dust from the ceiling, from the attic into the room, and then you should be considering getting that professionally vacuumed out. You never want to go up there yourself. It's a highly hazardous zone. People have electrocuted themselves to death in attics, and you can certainly fall through. I've got a client who fell through a ceiling, and
Hey, that's a really
lead
fair
right
point.
into
Yeah.
that.
I'll have to check that out. I've never seen it. Lead
Yeah,
is it called lead, the silent epidemic? Lead
sorry.
poisoning. No problem. So, yeah, and so volcanoes were really the original lead.
So that
Neutralized.
you
I
diluting.
imagine that the lead from the volcanoes compared with, let's say, car emission, lead pollution or
Right.
smelting, which is
Well,
pure lead
well,
oxide with no
yeah.
sulfur. So
Does it?
the Volcano Art
Does it
Prize is kind of
change?
a potentially, yeah, yeah, it could change over time, I suppose. Like enough nitric
Yeah.
acid in the rain would,
Yeah.
remove some of that sulfide from the lead, giving rise to
Yeah.
soluble lead. So the Volcano Art Prize is really a kind of diffuse competition, which has a goal of just raising awareness, sharing information, doing whatever
Yeah.
scientific art that is potentially interesting on the topic.
It
Yeah,
has.
and those mugs are lead
So
free, I'm sure. I'm not sure.
Hopefully they have.
Hopefully they have. I think
Yeah,
that they probably
yeah,
would have done that. I have a
yeah,
question about newspaper ink. I read a study from the
yeah,
1970s that
yeah.
said the newspaper ink at the time was riddled with lead. I'm sure it's
The
happened.
days.
Not a great day,
Um,
but I can imagine it. Oh yeah, no, I see. I'm on it on my own thing. Yeah, approximately 1992, and it
right.
follows
Yeah.
the Allie Page, the energetic 5-year-old. Then she suffered the lead and encephalopathy. Her mother, public health service person. Yeah, and they're talking about lead. You don't happen to have a copy of the actual video though? I
We don't
see.
have an
Not the hardest thing to
emailable
do,
version.
but yeah, I did it a few years
Yeah.
ago. I took a bunch of my parents' VHSs, and you just plug in the VHS to the computer, and then you just play the VHS, and then it sends it in there. Well, it has you have the 2 or 3 cables that go into the VHS. Yeah, like you have an actual VHS player, yeah, and then you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
plug
yeah.
that outflow into the computer, and
Yeah,
then the computer
yeah.
reads it, and then it encodes it. But you actually, it's funny
Right.
because you actually have to play the entire tape for it to get
Yeah,
off. So it takes like six
yeah,
hours if it's a 6 hour tape. But you wind up with all these cool, But I know that
yeah,
people do it professionally, and you don't
yeah.
have to tie up your
Right.
computer for 6 hours. But where do you store all
That's
this
true.
stuff?
Yeah.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
exciting. I mean, it's really
Mm.
interesting. And that was distributed in the United States. That sounds fun. I would love to watch it and, make
Yeah.
some commentary.
Yeah.
And I think that that could be a fun time. That's hilarious.
That's
I mean, it's not funny,
so
but it's,
funny.
yes. With
Like
impaired
it's really
cognition,
not
yeah.
easy.
That's part of the thing about that is it
Yeah.
causes
Yeah.
these personality changes, and
Mm.
the impaired cognition goes along with it. So for him to have the wherewithal that he had become,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
He was just
very
caught it
aggressive.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I could imagine
Yeah.
it's easy to not to miss that and
Yeah.
then to just,
Mm.
go along like that, which
Yeah.
I think is part of the widespread problem we face in the world. But
Yeah.
lead is a serious threat, and it is the silent epidemic. You really don't know about it, and a lot of people that wind up not talking about it. Not everybody takes um, takes the opportunity to share their experience with other people. A lot of people,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
just they don't have a good experience with it, and then they just kind of move on from it as quickly as possible. Yeah.
And
Wow.
oh,
Yeah. And what
so
year was that? Was it what year was that?
the
It says that there was a deadline though on the shirt. Sell the stock. Hard
It
genie
just
to put back in
yeah.
the earth. Yeah, for real. A lead
Star
poisoned
Trek
planet.
just
I wonder if they ever made an episode like that where there was another civilization that did something like burning a lot of lead, contaminating the entire planet and causing mass
yeah,
reduction in
yeah,
IQ, and then they would just be
right,
like savages watching football or
yeah,
something. Idiocracy. That was very like on the nose, but I mean I think that that
yeah,
sentiment is they left out the fact that it was lead that was doing that though.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think they
right,
just
right,
chalked it up to just like people are idiots, but
yeah,
at the time like there wasn't
yeah,
kind of maybe as much perspective as we have now, and I don't even think that the perspective that we hold on the fact that lead is so widespread, it was so prevalent in everybody's blood that it certainly impacted human history to such a high degree that we can't really
mm,
understand it right now because everything that happens
yeah,
today is a direct
yeah,
result of the lead exposure to the
yeah,
entire civilization, most of which is
yeah,
alive
yeah.
right now. I agree.
Um,
He killed the most
and
people in history.
yeah,
Yeah, well, the thing
it's a
with
lead,
CFCs,
it is,
it's a totally it's a totally different I think it's a totally different paradigm because when you have a mine, it's
yeah,
just begging to be mined. The people who own the mine already own the equipment. The mine will
yeah,
produce the ore
yeah,
is super cheap
yeah,
to make. And then there's this
super cheap,
whole it's like a spring or a well. Like it just keeps on coming out. It's like an oil well.
mm,
How do you
mm,
stop like oil is polluting the
yeah,
planet's atmosphere so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
But with CFCs, like you have to take steps, buy precursor materials, manufacture the stuff, and then put it out. So you can just
mm,
manufacture something else because it's no different to you. You can just buy a different chemical and mix it different, and then sell the same. It's just so horrible because if you got a lead mine,
yeah, yeah,
you have to sell lead. Like, what are you gonna
yeah,
do?
yeah,
Just
yeah.
quit capitalism? It's a little late. You're already rich. You're selling lead out of the ground.
Yeah,
It's like a great margin on lead
yeah,
ore.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
no idea what the that's a really interesting aspect I think to this though because it's the economics of lead it being profitable that kept it in
yeah,
commerce. Like everybody knew it was
yes,
toxic. They knew it was toxic when they first decided to put it into the
yeah,
gasoline. But the people who were
yeah,
in the kind of seat of power were wooed by over the table, under the table, scientists being bought and paid for, and then they just
mm,
kept on getting pushed forward. And now today,
yeah,
there's a lot of resilience from or resistance from food manufacturers and manufacturers of products because there's lead incidentally in those products, and it's going to
yes,
cost
yeah,
more
yeah,
to monitor it. It's going to cost more to exclude it intentionally. Nobody wants to be found with lead in their stuff, but if there's no way that widespread testing is occurring, then it's essentially not there. Let's. And what is
mint.
Ayurvedic medicine? No, that's incredible.
Yeah,
350
yeah.
micrograms a deciliter is a really high number. Yeah, probably nearly
Yeah,
everyone. If half
yeah,
are above 10, that's really, really
yeah,
high.
you'd be
Wow.
lucky.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of luck
Yeah,
because there's no
yeah, a
regulations
lot
on.
of.
I wonder if it's got me thinking about. Have you ever seen the diagram of bananas as a proxy for exposure to radiation? Because bananas contain potassium, and so
Uh-huh.
some of the potassium is radioactive, and so you consume. I can't. I'm looking it up right now. You consume a certain amount of radiation from a banana, and that number is eating one banana is zero point 0.1 microsievert.
Right.
And so if you, let's say, one arm X-ray is like 10 bananas
Okay.
using a certain monitor, and so they package it in these little boxes, and the
Yeah.
boxes get bigger and bigger and bigger. A dental X-ray, that's
Yeah.
50 bananas,
Right.
and it goes up and up and up. And so
That's
not
radiation.
really, because you have 200 grams of potassium in your body at all times. It actually,
Okay.
potassium from our diet accounts for one third of our total radiation exposure. The
Hmm.
other third is like celestial, and then it's like for an approximation. If you live on an elevated place, you're going to get a lot more
Yeah.
radiation from space.
Okay.
If you live near, in a concrete house, you're going to get a lot more radiation from the thorium in the concrete. Um,
Ah.
and so, it says right here, living in a stone brick or concrete building for a year is 700 bananas. So it's a pretty, and it can go, a mammogram is 4,000 bananas. But, going on an airplane, I think a chest x-ray is 200 bananas. An airplane flight is 400 bananas as well,
Yes.
because you're going so
Yeah.
high. So this is kind of shocking, and I think this really
Yeah.
well contextualizes the amount of radiation people are exposed to, since you're literally exposed to it from eating a banana. So it's
Yeah.
this Ayurvedic medicine's got me thinking, what if there was a similar chart that would show you how much like lead you'd be exposed to by doing various things. So by
Yeah. Yeah.
consuming, 1 milligram of lead paint dust, what would that
Yeah.
do? Consuming a little bit of
Yeah.
dust from the soil that contains X amount of lead, and then go along to something like Ayurvedic medicine, which would be like consuming an entire handful of dust. I'm being
Yeah.
hyperbolic,
Yeah.
but there's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
facts to that some of
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things are really potent delivery mechanisms for lead, especially something you're consuming intentionally that has, like I
Yeah.
just read, over 1% lead.
Yeah.
That's like a 10,000 parts per million is 1%.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
high. That's a lot of percent. That shouldn't be even.
Yeah. Yeah.
10,000 parts per billion is super dangerous to consume orally in any
Yeah.
amount. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of.
Well, so Eric,
Yeah,
that
it would be.
like
Okay, yeah. And by get
yeah.
rid of, you mean absorb into your bones or
No,
excrete.
no.
And but you never got that in your body. You're basically consuming that,
Yeah.
and it's just passing
Yes.
through.
Because
Yeah.
you've got
Bring back bloodletting. That's
and of
helpful, yeah.
course
I
can you
think
be the
I'm gonna guess that
work this
it's.
out?
I'm gonna guess that
Research
it's.
it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll
Yeah.
look into it. I'm guessing though that it's impossible to hold on to all of those elements all the time, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
some
That,
just
that it's got to
happens.
be.
Yeah, and
Yes,
there's an
slightly. Yes, you
advantage
do. Yeah.
using like there's an advantage to like conserving energy to not hold on too obsessively to every ion of calcium because like evolutionarily we've been had access to calcium, so like we don't really need to
Right.
like be obsessed with holding on to all the calcium. We can like be like, okay, we'll just let some of it go. We know we're gonna
Yeah,
get some
yeah.
more in our diet, and we've done this
Right.
forever for so long. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, that may be what it
Right.
is, and it's also not a perfect match. It's electrostatically similar to calcium, but it's not identical, and so
Right.
there's probably a
Yeah.
higher chance that it just kind of bops out. I don't know about straight out, but
Or
I don't know if the absorption is
yeah.
limited by the amount that's already in us, but I bet you that it's like let's say you're consuming a lot of zinc, calcium, selenium, you're going to have a
Yeah.
lot more excretion of those elements. Obviously, it's not just going to build up forever. Like it's going to
Right. Right.
increase in
Yeah.
excretion. So theoretically, if you did have good supplementation or at least a good like consumption from your diet of those elements, you
Yeah.
would increase your
Yeah.
lead excretion to some degree. But there is
Yeah.
also a downside of taking too much calcium, zinc, and selenium as well. And that's why supplementation of those things isn't typically recommended by
Yeah.
doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you just
Yeah.
are cognizant of getting these elements in a solid amount, but not like a crazy, like you're taking calcium
Yeah.
pills amount,
Yeah.
unless you need, if you have osteopenia or something, you probably could do with more calcium. But um,
Yeah.
that's and I think that proper, fortification of the diet with those elements is definitely a great move when facing
Yeah.
a lead contamination scenario. So another thing
Yeah.
to add to the anti lead meals is something with a lot of calcium, zinc, and selenium. That's a
Yeah,
good idea. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know. It depends, I guess, on the quality of water in your area. But I'm also big on like supplementing. Like if you don't get like because like let's say there's two sources. So like let's say you're getting trace minerals, and this is an extreme example. Let's say you're getting trace minerals from either a supplement that has only those trace minerals, or a sea salt that does have those trace minerals and also has some other stuff that you might not want.
right.
I think it's probably better bet to just supplement specifically than like consuming from a source that has good stuff and bad stuff, but you're just taking it
Yeah,
all at once because it's a traditional method, or people's been
yeah,
saying sea salt is good for you for some reason because they sell sea salt. Also, another mining scenario. So the people who sell sea salt are going to say whatever they can because they're getting paid to do it, and they
yeah,
they they only sell sea salt. They have a sea salt mine. So
mm,
but there's a million ways to do it, and
yeah,
if you don't have detectable lead in your water, you're probably gonna be good. But I know around here, I wouldn't drink the water just because it's being treated. There's all these
yeah,
chlorine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Advocacy.
that's
Yeah.
wise.
So
Mm. That's pretty
yeah, this
sophisticated. Yeah, that's cool.
is
Another calcium mimic. Would it be
yeah,
lead fluoride? I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's an hour and a half.
yeah,
But I mean, people are hungry for this lead information. I think that we, um,
yeah.
are having a good time talking about a topic that is normally not a good time to a good topic to talk about. It's not a good time to talk about it. So I appreciate that perspective,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
really, I think that I'm just so grateful to learn this stuff. I know everybody else. The
yeah,
Volcano Art Prize is really awesome. Lead finds some money,
yeah,
and just share more information about lead. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Awesome. So I'll see you on the next one, Liz. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.